The galaxy was on the edge of ruin. The Tyrannian Empire had been on a relentless campaign for decades, sweeping through countless worlds, leaving devastation in their wake. They were known for their superior technology, their brutal tactics, and their absolute domination of anything in their path. The coalition of allied species had fought valiantly, but the enemy was too powerful, too determined to be stopped, and now the galaxy's last hope was fading. The great warships of the CAS fleets had been driven back. The once proud defenders were scattered across the stars. Each world, a burning husk of what it had once been. The resistance was crumbling, and even the bravest warriors had begun to question if there was any point in continuing the fight. The Tyrannians had already won in the eyes of many. Their victory was inevitable, and all that was left was to watch as the galaxy fell under their tyrannical rule. The united races of the galaxy looked toward their distant leaders for guidance. But even they had lost hope. With no more ships to rally the defenses, no more plans to enact, the universe seemed like it was on the brink of its darkest hour. And then came the rumor, a whisper in the wind, a spark in the dead of night. Humanity had come to the stars long after the other races had established their empires. Their warships were nothing like the sleek and powerful vessels of the Xorith or the massive dreadnoughts of the Clive. Humanity had always relied on cunning, adaptability, and sheer determination rather than superior numbers or advanced technology. Their ships were rudimentary compared to the fleets of the Tyrannians, but they made up for it in ways that other races couldn't even comprehend. There was a ship, though, just one ship that had been built in secret that was unlike anything ever seen before. The Vanguard of Terra was the human response to the tyranny of the invaders, a colossal warship unlike any other. It was a fusion of human technology and creativity. It was designed not for numbers, but for the impossible. The stories about it had spread like wildfire across the galaxy, but no one truly knew what it could do or if it would even make a difference against the Tyrannian war machine. As the battle for one of the last remaining systems in the coalition reached its breaking point, the Vanguard of Terra emerged from the deep space void. It was an imposing figure on the battlefield, its angular design cutting through the chaos like a blade. It was accompanied by a small fleet of human ships, but the Vanguard itself was the centerpiece. Its hull gleamed with an almost alien energy, unlike any other ship the Tyrannians had ever faced. It was clear that humanity had brought something new to the table, but no one knew what it was or how it would fare against the might of the Empire. The Tyrannians were first to react, their ships moving in to engage the new arrival with predictable speed and efficiency. They were used to facing enemies who couldn't match their strength or firepower. But the humans were different. Their ship did not respond the way the Tyrannians expected. It did not fight by the rules they knew. And it was in that moment that the Empire would begin to understand just how different humanity truly was. The Tyrannian ships closed in with terrifying precision, their weapons charged and ready to unleash their fury on the human vessel. They were confident that no ship could withstand their combined might. But the Vanguard of Terra did not break. The first barrage of fire struck its shields, and the impact sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. But the shields held strong. They shimmered with an almost unnatural glow, absorbing the full brunt of the attack. The Tyrannian captains watched in disbelief as their powerful weapons seemed to have no effect at all. The Vanguard did not hesitate. It responded in an instant with a single devastating salvo of its own. The Tyrannian ships had barely registered the movement before their lead warship was torn apart by the concentrated energy blasts. It shattered into pieces, a massive explosion lighting up the battlefield in a flash. The other Tyrannian ships reeled back in confusion, trying to process what they had just witnessed. No one had ever seen a ship destroy one of their own that quickly. No one had ever seen a ship so resilient, so ready to fight. Humanity's ship was not just fighting with power, it was fighting with purpose and precision. The crew of the Vanguard was unlike any other. They didn't hesitate or falter in the heat of battle. They acted as one with a shared goal to defeat the Tyrannians and protect the galaxy. Every decision, every movement was executed with a calm that sent shockwaves through the Tyrannian forces. The crew had a single focus, and that focus was victory, and they were not going to stop until they had it. The Tyrannian fleet scrambled to regroup, realizing that their tactics might not be enough against the human ship. They began to circle the Vanguard, Hoping to catch it in a trap with overwhelming numbers, their weapons fired once again at the human ship. But this time the Vanguard was ready. It moved with a speed and agility that no one had expected. It wove through the incoming fire like a dancer, evading each shot with precise, calculated maneuvers. The Tyranian ships couldn't match its speed or its unpredictability. Then the Vanguard struck back again, its weapons coming to life with brutal efficiency. It tore through the Tyranian ranks in a whirlwind of destruction. Each blast sent enemy ships into disarray. The Tyranian commanders could hardly keep up with the changing tactics of the human ship. Its every move was a new problem they hadn't anticipated, and with each passing moment, the human warship seemed more and more unstoppable. The battle raged on, and the Tyranian Empire's confidence began to erode with every loss they suffered. The humans were not like the other species they had crushed. The humans were different. They fought with a fire that could not be extinguished, and as the Vanguard led the charge, the tides of the battle began to shift. The once confident Tyranian fleet started to retreat slowly at first, but with increasing desperation. The Vanguard was not done yet. It wasn't just about fighting for victory. It was about sending a message. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had just declared its arrival in the most unforgettable way possible. The Tyranians had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The Vanguard wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of defiance, and the Tyranians were starting to realize they had made a grave mistake underestimating humanity. News of the human warship's triumph spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The coalition of allied species could hardly believe what they were hearing. But as they watched the battle unfold through the stars, they saw it with their own eyes. The Tyranian fleet was faltering. The Vanguard of Terra was carving a path through the invaders with a precision and power that none of the galaxy's greatest tacticians had expected. The Tyranians were known for their ruthless efficiency. Their massive fleets had crushed entire worlds. But against this new enemy, they seemed disorganized, confused. Their once unshakable confidence was slipping. For the first time in years, the forces of the CAS felt a glimmer of hope. Their shattered fleets began to regroup. The resistance fighters who had been on the verge of surrender now found themselves emboldened by the human arrival. They could see that the fight was far from over. They could see that the Tyranians could be beaten. The humans had proven it. The Vanguard had proven it. And that spark of rebellion was spreading through every race in the galaxy. Captain Harper, the leader of the Vanguard, stood at the command deck watching as his ship tore through the enemy lines. His eyes were focused and calculating, but there was no doubt in his mind. This was just the beginning. The Tyranians were not going to give up easily, and neither would he. Humanity had already fought countless battles for survival, and they had never given up, no matter the odds. They had fought back against superior forces time and time again, and they had survived. And now it was time to make the Tyranians pay for their conquest of the galaxy. As the Vanguard continued its relentless assault, the Tyranian fleet began to splinter, their ships turning on each other. In confusion, the sheer unpredictability of the humans' tactics was too much for their commanders to handle. Each new move was something they hadn't anticipated, and the humans were exploiting every weakness. The Tyranians had once thought invincible. Their mighty warships, which had been feared across the stars, now seemed fragile and weak against the ingenuity and resilience of humanity. The tide of the battle was shifting, and the CAS leaders could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Their ships began to push forward with renewed vigor, following the lead of the Vanguard. They began to retake lost ground. World after world, the Tyranians were being pushed back. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, and now they were paying the price. But the Vanguard was not done yet. Captain Harper knew that the battle was far from over. The Tyranians were too dangerous to be left unchecked. Their retreat was just a temporary setback. They would regroup and come back, stronger than before, but humanity was ready for them. The Vanguard wasn't just a symbol of strength. It was a symbol of defiance, a beacon for all those who had been oppressed by the Tyranians. The human ship had proven that no matter how insurmountable the odds, the spirit of humanity would not be broken. The humans had not just joined the fight, they had transformed it. They had turned the tide of war, and for the first time in a long while, the galaxy could see a future where the Tyranians were not the victors, but the defeated. It was a future where humanity would lead the charge toward freedom. and it was a future the galaxy would never forget. As the battle raged on, a new layer of danger began to unfold. The Tyranians were no longer simply retreating, they were regrouping and preparing a devastating counterattack. The vanguard of Terra had pushed them to the brink, but the enemy had one final weapon, a bioengineered warship unlike anything seen before. It was a living ship grown from the darkest corners of Tyranian science. Its size was beyond comprehension. Its hull was reinforced with living armor that could regenerate as fast as it was damaged. It was more than a ship, it was a force of nature, a living beast with the singular purpose of annihilation. The Tyranians unleashed this creature in the heart of the Coalition's defensive line, and for a moment it seemed like the vanguard might meet its match. The monstrous ship launched forward with incredible speed. Its weaponry was devastating. Its energy cannons disintegrated entire fleets. With a single shot, its sheer size was enough to strike terror into the hearts of those who faced it. But Captain Harper wasn't intimidated. He knew that if humanity had any chance of winning this war, it wouldn't come from fear or firepower alone. It would come from human ingenuity and willpower. The vanguard braced for impact. The living warship's first attack hit its shields with such force that it sent tremors throughout the entire ship. The hull groaned under the pressure, but it held steady. For the humans aboard, this was nothing new. They had faced worse and survived. The Tyranians might have an unyielding war machine, but humanity had something far more dangerous: their ability to adapt, to think on their feet, to overcome impossible odds. Captain Harper gave the order, and the vanguard responded. The human ship did not retreat or falter. It changed tactics, moving with a speed that left the Tyranian ship confused and off balance. Every move it made was unpredictable. Every strike was calculated to hit where the enemy was weakest. The Tyranian bioship tried to retaliate, but it couldn't match the agility and precision of the vanguard's crew working together. As one, they found gaps in the living armor of the Tyranian ship. With every hit, they'd exposed a new weakness, a new opening. And as the vanguard pressed on, the mighty bioship began to bleed, its regenerative armor struggling to keep up with the onslaught of human ingenuity. The Tyranian commanders, watching from their flagship, realized too late that they had underestimated the humans. Once again, their bioengineered warship was faltering, its systems failing as the vanguard relentlessly pressed the attack. With every new hit, the tide of battle was turning, but Captain Harper knew they couldn't waste time. The Tyranian Empire had too many secrets, too many dark technologies hidden away, and if they were to secure victory, they had to strike now before the enemy regrouped. As the vanguard pierced the heart of the Tyranian ship, Captain Harper made a bold decision. The living warship was weakening, but it still posed a threat. The only way to guarantee the Tyranian bioship's destruction was to get up close and personal with it. He ordered the vanguard to go in closer. The vanguard's engines roared as the massive ship closed the gap, preparing for one final strike. The crew aboard braced themselves for the impact as they launched every weapon at their disposal in a concentrated barrage, designed to tear the bioship apart once and for all. In those final moments, it was clear that humanity had something the Tyranians could never replicate. They had the will to keep fighting, even when every piece of logic said they should retreat. They had the courage to face the impossible, and even in the face of death, they fought with everything they had. As the Tyranian bioship finally crumbled into space debris, the coalition of allied species found themselves on the cusp of something they hadn't dared hope for in years: victory against the seemingly unstoppable Tyranian Empire. The vanguard of Terra had done the impossible. It had broken the backbone of the Tyranian fleet and left their most fearsome weapon in ruin. But Captain Harper knew that the battle was not over. The Tyranians were not a race to give up so easily. Their empire was built on strength and brutality, and though the bioship had fallen, the core of the empire was still intact. In the aftermath of the battle, Harper ordered his crew to take a moment to regroup. The vanguard had sustained significant damage, but it was still operational. The crew was battered but unbowed. They had proven themselves capable of fighting and winning against the Tyranians. But this was far from the end. The Tyranians would not simply lie down and surrender. Instead, they would adapt. They would strike back with everything they had left, and humanity had to be ready for it. The Tyranian Empire's political and military leadership was reeling from the loss of their most powerful weapon, but they were not without recourse. In the darkness of their hidden bunkers, they began to activate their last line of defense, a weapon far more insidious than anything the galaxy had seen before. The Tyranians had been working for years on a new technology, one that could control the minds of entire fleets, a weapon that would turn the tide of the war in their favor if they could just implement it properly. Captain Harper wasn't blind to this threat. He knew that the Tyranians would do anything to maintain their dominance, and the new weapon they had begun to deploy was unlike anything humanity had faced before. The humans had fought with fire and ingenuity, but the Tyranians now had a way to strip that away. They began to unleash mind-controlled fleets across the galaxy using their new technology to force entire ships to fight for them against their will. It was a devastating tactic, one that sent shockwaves through the CAS forces and made every human officer question what they had just uncovered. The true nature of the Tyranian war machine began to unravel as the human intelligence officers uncovered the depths of the mind control technology. Tyranian soldiers were no longer fighting of their own free will. They were being puppeteered by the Tyranian overlords. The galaxy was not just facing an empire of conquest, it was facing a system built on fear and manipulation. The humans had to act fast before the full scale of the mind-controlled fleets could be brought to bear. In response, the Vanguard set a new course. It was time to take the fight directly to the heart of the Tyranian leadership. It wasn't just about defeating their ships or dismantling their fleets anymore. It was about exposing the corruption at the core of the empire. It was about freeing the Tyranian soldiers from their chains and showing them the way to freedom. Humanity had faced dark times before, but they had never given up, no matter the odds. They were about to make their most daring move, yet one that could change the fate of the entire galaxy forever. The Vanguard was no longer just a symbol of military might, it was a symbol of hope for every oppressed species in the galaxy, and humanity would stop at nothing to see that hope realized. They would take the fight to the Tyranian heart and show the galaxy that even the most insurmountable enemies could be defeated with enough courage, determination, and willpower. The decision to strike at the heart of the Tyranian Empire was not one made lightly. Captain Harper knew the risks were enormous. The Tyranians would not take this lightly, and the journey to their core worlds would be fraught with danger. But the Vanguard was ready, its crew was determined, and the galaxy had never needed humanity more than it did now. The Tyranians had not just threatened the galaxy, they had enslaved it with their mind control technology, and humanity could not stand by while the very essence of freedom was being stripped away. As the Vanguard prepared to enter deep Tyranian space, Harper assembled his senior officers for one final briefing. The crew knew what was at stake. This mission was about more than just defeating the enemy. It was about breaking the chains that had bound so many for so long. They would infiltrate the heart of the Tyranian Empire, expose the truth of their mind control operations, and free the slaves who had been manipulated into serving the Empire. The operation was risky, and the odds were long, but humanity was used to the impossible. They had survived against overwhelming odds time and time again, and now they were ready to face their greatest challenge. Yet with a heavy heart, Harper issued the orders, and the Vanguard set off toward the heart of the Tyranian Empire. As they entered the deep reaches of Tyranian space, the first signs of resistance were felt. The Tyranian fleets had been lying in wait, ready to defend the Empire's core worlds, but the humans were no longer intimidated. The Vanguard moved like a shadow through the vastness of space, evading the Tyranian forces with unmatched speed and precision. The ship's advanced cloaking systems made it nearly invisible to enemy sensors, and the crew used this to their advantage, sneaking past the first wave of defense and making their way closer to the Tyranian capital. It wasn't long before the Tyranian Empire realized the humans were inside their territory, and the full might of their fleet descended upon the Vanguard. But Harper and his crew were prepared for this. They had spent countless hours studying the Tyranian tactics and had formulated a strategy to disrupt the enemy's communications. The Tyranians relied on their mind-controlled forces to operate as a cohesive unit, but humanity had discovered that their ability to communicate over vast distances could be severed with the right technology. The Vanguard began its attack on the Tyranian fleet with lightning-fast strikes, designed to cause confusion and chaos among their forces. Each strike was aimed at disabling key communications relays, cutting off the flow of information between the Tyranian ships. With each successful hit, the once formidable enemy fleet began to falter. Their attacks became disjointed and less effective. The Tyranians had been trained to work as one, but now they were scattered, no longer able to coordinate their efforts, and the Vanguard capitalized on every moment of their disarray. The closer the Vanguard got to the Tyranian capital, the more intense the battle became. The enemy threw everything they had at the human warship, but the Vanguard was relentless. It fought with the tenacity and ingenuity that humanity was known for. Harper's crew worked in perfect synchronization. Their mission was clear, and they would not be stopped. As they approached the heart of the Tyranian Empire, Harper knew they were about to face their most dangerous challenge, yet the core of the Tyranian leadership was within their grasp, and they would stop at nothing to ensure the galaxy would be freed from the Tyranian grip. But the path forward was filled with traps and deadly weapons, designed to protect the heart of the Empire, and the Vanguard was going to have to face them all. The battle for the Tyranian stronghold was unlike anything the Vanguard crew had ever faced. It was a brutal push through dense planetary defenses and automated weapon systems that seemed to be everywhere. The ground shook as the Vanguard descended through the atmosphere, heading straight for the underground fortress hidden beneath the surface of the Tyranian capital. Harper could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on him. They had reached the final stage of their fight, the most crucial moment, and failure was not an option. They landed just outside the entrance to the underground fortress. The planet's atmosphere was thick with tension, and the air around the Vanguard hummed with the energy of the impending conflict. Harper and his crew had only one goal now: to breach the stronghold and stop the Tyranian weapon from activation at all costs. The fortress was heavily fortified, with walls of reinforced metal and energy barriers, but nothing could stop humanity's resolve. As the doors to the Vanguard opened, Harper led the charge down the ramp into the darkened cavernous space. Below, the sound of enemy footsteps echoed in the distance. Tyranian soldiers, under the influence of the mind control technology, were waiting for them, and they would stop at nothing to protect the weapon the humans had come to destroy. But Harper's crew had been in far worse situations, and they weren't about to let anything stop them now. The corridors of the fortress were a labyrinth of twists and turns as the humans fought their way deeper into the heart of the Tyranian stronghold. Each corner they turned brought new challenges. Automated defense turrets fired at them from hidden compartments, and Tyranian soldiers charged at them with unnatural speed and strength. But the humans pressed forward with a relentless drive. Each obstacle was met with an equal and opposite force: humanity's ingenuity, their ability to adapt to any situation, and their unwavering determination was proving to be their greatest weapon. As they neared the heart of the fortress, Harper's heart pounded in his chest. They could see the entrance to the chamber where the weapon was housed. The doors were massive and adorned with Tyranian symbols. The very sight of it made the crew's blood boil. They had seen the devastation the Tyranians had caused to countless worlds, and now it was time to end it all. They would stop the weapon or die trying. Harper gave the order, and the doors to the weapon chamber were breached. The Tyranian guards inside stood frozen for a moment in shock as the humans stormed, and the weapon was visible in the center of the room, a towering structure humming with dark energy. It was clear that if it activated, it would have the power to control entire star systems, but the humans were not about to let that happen. With precise coordination, the crew of the Vanguard moved into position, disabling the weapon's power systems and setting charges to destroy the control network. The Tyranian soldiers tried to stop them, but they were too late. The humans had already outsmarted them. Every step of the way, Harper stood at the center of the room, watching as the final pieces of the weapon's control system were dismantled. He knew that they had succeeded. They had won this battle. But more than that, they had sent a message to the Tyranians and the galaxy alike. The Tyranian Empire had been brought to its knees, and humanity had shown the galaxy that no matter how strong or how insurmountable an enemy seemed, they would never stop fighting for freedom. The Vanguard was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's spirit, their resilience, their refusal to give up even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the charges detonated, and the Tyrannian weapon was destroyed. The Vanguard took off once again, this time into the vastness of space, leaving behind a crumbling empire and a galaxy forever changed. The Tyrannians would never forget the arrival of the human warship, and neither would the galaxy, for humanity had proven that it was not just another player in the war, it was the force that would reshape the future of the stars forever. As the Vanguard closed in on the Tyrannian capital, the tension aboard the ship reached a fever pitch. The crew knew they were entering the lion's den, the heart of the Empire, where the most dangerous threats awaited them. Harper stood at the command center watching the stars stretch out before him. The battle had been long and grueling, but they were almost there. The Tyrannian fleet was in disarray, but the core of their empire was still a formidable force, and the defenses around their capital were unlike anything the humans had encountered before. Harper addressed the crew one final time before they plunged into the heart of the Tyrannian stronghold. The mission was simple in its goal, but impossible in its execution. They would infiltrate the capital, disrupt the mind control network, and liberate the enslaved soldiers who fought for the Empire under the influence of the Tyrannian overlords. But there was no guarantee they would survive this assault. The Vanguard had already taken heavy damage, and the enemy's countermeasures were relentless. The crew knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes, and they had already come too far to turn back. The Tyrannians were prepared for them. As the Vanguard entered the capital system, massive planetary defense stations locked onto the human warship, their weapons charged and ready. The Tyrannians had fortified their last line of defense with an impenetrable web of turrets, energy shields, and automated drones designed to neutralize any intruders. Harper knew they couldn't waste time trying to fight through it. All they had to get past the defenses and strike at the heart of the Empire before the entire fleet descended on them. The Vanguard moved with brutal precision, dodging incoming fire and using every trick in their arsenal to stay one step ahead of the Tyrannian onslaught. The ship's cloaking systems flickered as they moved deeper into the capital's defenses. Each time they avoided a shot, the Tyrannians retaliated with increasing intensity, but the humans were relentless. Every maneuver, every strike, was calculated to weaken the enemy's defenses bit by bit. As the Vanguard punched through the outer defenses, Harper's heart raced. The time for subtlety was over. They had to go all in. They couldn't afford to play it safe anymore. The final approach to the Tyrannian capital world was a maze of automated drones and deadly defense arrays. But Harper and his crew were not deterred. They had trained for this moment, and they moved with perfect coordination, each member of the crew performing their role flawlessly. It was a dance of destruction and precision as the Vanguard tore through the defenses one by one. They reached the planet's atmosphere, and for a moment it felt like they had made it through the worst. But that was when the Tyrannian leadership revealed their trump card. Hidden deep within the planet's surface was an underground fortress, a massive stronghold built to house their most powerful weapon, yet a weapon that could turn the tide of the entire war. If it was unleashed, it was a weapon designed to control not just fleets but entire star systems, and the Tyrannians were about to activate it. Harper's mind raced as he processed this new threat. The battle was no longer just about defeating the Tyrannians, it was about preventing the destruction of the galaxy's last hope. If they couldn't stop the activation of this weapon, all their efforts would have been for nothing. The Vanguard had to break into the fortress and stop the launch before it was too late. But with the planet's defenses growing stronger by the minute, the clock was ticking and time was running out. They would have to fight their way into the heart of the Tyrannian stronghold if they wanted any chance at victory and survival. The humans knew they couldn't afford to fail now. The galaxy's future depended on them, and they would do whatever it took to make sure that future was one of freedom, not tyranny.